Good evening, everyone. It is Thursday, January 13th. We are talking a mere 6 hours before a developing low-pressure system. And really, it's just a clipper system dropping out of Canada that's expected to impact the upper Midwest and the plains. But we also have a more significant piece of energy which has pulled onto the Northwest Pacific, and another piece of energy taking place in Western Canada. All of these things are going to collide at some point, along with some other stuff going on, and this is going to make quite a storm on the East Coast. But even here in the Midwest, in the plains, really a very significant system, and it's really unique in the fact that Chicago is missing this. You know, Chicago has plenty of storms that Chicago misses, but if you look at the storm tracks of these systems, you might have a system that goes from the southern plains and then it heads on east and it just goes to our south. That happens a lot of times. And then you have central Illinois, southern Illinois. They get the 6 to 12 inches, sometimes even more than a foot. This took place in the year 2013 in March, and it's taken place many other times, and that's something that happens. Sometimes you have a clipper type system coming out of Canada that dives southeast, and the system goes a little bit too far north. Milwaukee gets it. Sometimes those types of systems don't tend to go a little bit too far south, really. Perhaps the bullseye goes a little bit further south, but Chicago tends to get the ones that go further south. Occasionally they do go further north, however. This system is really, really unique in that it's going to be affecting both the Midwest and the East Coast. Chicago is right in between, and yet Chicago is not getting it at all. The system is dropping due south, right out of Canada. It's not moving southeast. It isn't. It's going due south. The system on the Northwest Pacific, that piece of energy is going to be moving south and southeast. But the one coming out of Canada is just dropping out of Canada. That's unique. The reason for that is because of a high pressure system, which is just a blocking high pressure system around the eastern Canada area, which will be moving also off the New England coast. But that high pressure system is just anchored there. It's stationary there, and it's preventing storms from hitting certain areas. Storms are rotating around it. It recirculates. It redirects the storm. The storm can't go into that area. So it's also going to impact the way the storm moves up the East Coast, which is also not going to be normal. Climatology does not support this. Certainly will not be supporting what is currently forecasted by the computer models for the East Coast. The East Coast, generally, these nor'easters, they move just east of the coast along the coastal front. They bring heavy snow to the main cities, sometimes rain, and the heavy snow goes just to the west of the main cities. But this nor'easter is expected to go along Interstate 95, possibly even further west than that. There are a couple of computer models which are still forecasting it to go a little bit further east of I-95, but that's not the general consensus right now. A little bit to the west of I-95, and that's again due to this blocking high. So that blocking high is causing lots of changes for the Midwest and changes on the East Coast. There's another strange thing about this clipper that's coming out of Canada. Clipper systems are usually moisture-starved systems. They have very little moisture, but they're super powdery snow because temperatures are so cold. So you can get an inch or 2 inches out of it, sometimes even more. Sometimes you can get 3 or 4 inches. Really, some of the bigger ones, you can maybe even get up to 6 inches. This one that's coming out of Canada has about a half an inch of the moisture available, and that's much higher than usual. That combined with the very powdery snow is creating a forecast of a very significant event, especially over Iowa, 6 to 12 inches of snow. There's another thing that needs to be said about central Iowa is that just weird stuff happened over there, and there will be areas that are going to walk away, somehow are going to walk away with 16 inches of snow. That's what I I have reason to believe that there will be places in central Iowa, regardless of what the forecast is. 6 to 12 inches might be the peak, but there will be areas that are going to walk away with 15 to 16 inches. The bullseye of this snowstorm is expected to be over the Corn Belt, which is just coincidental. We also have the Minnesota River Valley and we have the Mississippi River Valley, which is acting as certain border lines in the Minnesota area. Anywhere east of the Mississippi River Valley, the amount of snow is going to go way down. Now, usually the cutoff generally goes from south to north. In this system, it's directly west to east. The areas a little bit further east of the main snow are going to see very little snow. Areas just to the east of the Mississippi River, this is around the Minneapolis area, will be getting around an inch of snow. Areas to the west, 4 or 5 inches of snow. Some areas may get more in the Minnesota area or North Dakota, South Dakota area. Those snow amounts are going to increase again over Iowa. This low pressure system, there is reason to believe that it might be weakening a little bit as it moves south, but that's about it. It might weaken a little bit as it moves south. Therefore, snowfall amounts are going to also go down as it moves south. Again, it reaches its peak over Iowa, central Iowa, and things which reach their peak in central Iowa pull off some shtick. They generally even go well beyond what is ordinarily would be expected. So if 6 to 12 inches again, you'll have some counties which will be getting 15 to 16 inches in central Iowa. Also, snowfall rates in some parts of the Midwest are expected to be between 1 to 3 inches an hour due to the powdery nature of the snow. But most places, the peak intensity should be around a half an inch to an inch an hour. You know, the St. Louis, Missouri, 3 to 6 inches of snow is likely to fall in the St. Louis area. And again, Chicago is going to manage to pull off a dusting to an inch, probably because of lake moisture, and indirectly related to the storm. We will be getting some snow here, and we're really missing it. It's really unbelievable that how the system's doing a U. It's dropping directly south. It's going to then move east and then move up the coast. As it moves up the coast, it will be taking a little bit of a northeast track, but it's moving up the coast further to the west than usual. Now, we have these two pieces of energy, one coming off the west Canada, another one which is over the Washington-Oregon border. Those things are going to be diving southeast, and eventually they're going to collide over in the Central Plains sometime on Friday. And then, as it continues to move south, we're going to have a surface low, which will be developing probably on Shabbos and intensifying, and that thing is going to rapidly intensify, says the National Weather Service of Little Rock, Arkansas, as it moves east. And we're talking about a very major snowstorm. There's two major yisodos. I meant to say very intense low pressure, but there also will be a major snowstorm, but I meant to say very intense low pressure. There's two major yisodos here, fundamental principles we're about to say. Number one is that there are expert meteorologists who go with this theory when they're forecasting. Any low pressure system which is 29.2 or lower, you could assume will produce more than a foot of snow. If we're talking about a winter storm and the center part of the low pressure is 29.2 or lower, you could assume it will be more than a foot. So this storm system will be developing off in the southeast area of the United States. It's going to continue to develop and then move northeast. Many weather synopsis is wording it as something which is developing off the Carolinas and then moving northeast through New England, but it's a little bit more complex than that. It's going to be intensifying to 29.1 by the time you get to the New England area. So it certainly will be producing more than a foot. It certainly makes sense to forecast that this thing will be producing more than a foot. So current forecasts are calling for 12 to 18 inches for the bullseye on the East Coast. Places like Buffalo, New York have a pretty good chance of being in that area. And in fact, if Buffalo, New York is in that area, they will be getting more than 12 to 18 inches because of the lake, both lake enhancement and lake effect snow after the storm leaves. There's another major yesod over here, and this is a little bit spooky. I I find it spooky, but here it goes. There's expert meteorologists who have come up with this, and it seems to be true. How do you know where this storm is going to depart? What part of the East Coast is it going to depart? Sometimes we have storms that pull away when it hits North Carolina, then it goes way out to sea, and it misses the New England area, completely misses that area. But sometimes we don't. So how do you know what's going to happen? Okay, you could say you look at the computer models, but here's another way to tell. This way is especially effective and a very useful way before the storm has reached the coast. On the Pacific coast, we do not have much information about the storm. We don't have the weather balloons. We don't have anything like that until it reaches the land areas, the Washington, Oregon area. So we have limited information. So it's especially useful to use this approach. But even when we do have the computer models, this is still an accurate way. Whatever latitude the storm was at when it came onto the coast, on the Pacific coast, like this one came into the United States and the Washington-Oregon border. So whatever latitude that was, in general, the storm will depart the country on the same latitude, which is going to be a little bit north of Boston. In this case, it's going to be a little bit north of Boston. So this storm is going to be moving up the coast. That's very interesting stuff. It's so much stuff goes on between the West Coast. So much stuff goes on with this storm. The storm deteriorates as it goes over the Rockies, and this one's colliding with this piece of energy, that piece of energy, something dropping right out of Canada, the other one coming from Western Canada. We have another thing developing also down south. Okay, so and we have that blocking high pressure system, which is creating a unique situation. You could say that in this situation, maybe it's going to be unique because the whole thing is unique. Everything's unique. The storm track is unique. Going directly south, just dropping south out of Canada. Currently, the computer models are taking this storm even further south than what it originally was forecasted to do. We have Little Rock, Arkansas. There's a chance they might be getting 3 to 6 inches of snow. Memphis, Tennessee also. There's a chance they might be getting 3 to 6 inches of snow. And in fact, it's possible the heavier snow might even go further south than that. Kansas City, 2 to 4 inches of snow is the current forecast. And we'll see what's going to end up happening in regards to that. So this storm goes directly south. We have another thing that's very interesting about this storm. And I find this interesting, and it's also part of the blocking high, is that ahead of this storm, we don't really have that warm air, that warm, usually these large snowstorms producing 6 to 12 inches here in the Midwest. On the southeast side, you're getting warm with thunderstorms. You have to go very far to the south before you see that. And in fact, we might have to wait until the storm hits really the southeast part of the country, maybe areas in Florida, possibly even areas in Rhode Island. That's possible. The National Weather Service is not mentioning that. They are not mentioning that. Others are that there could be strong storms in the eastern part of east, even Long Island, New York as well. That's possible. A strong thunderstorm. That's also unique. Very unique. We have a lot of unique things which are happening. This storm system is going to be colliding with Gulf moisture. I don't know when that's going to be happening. I don't know where this storm is getting its moisture from in the Canadian area. Maybe it's Pacific. A lot of times that's Pacific moisture. It's certainly coming down with a lot more than usual. It will be colliding with Gulf moisture. Some say there's a narrow strip of Gulf moisture that's going to be feeding into the storm. Others say there's a lot more than that. And then it moves off to the East Coast, and we have strong east winds that are going to blow in Atlantic Ocean moisture well into the storm. We also have a couple of fronts, Arctic fronts, powerful Arctic cold fronts that are going to be moving through ahead of the storm. So that's not only is there not going to be that warm air, we actually have a powerful Arctic cold front which is affecting the East Coast tomorrow night, really. In fact, wind chills over much of the New England area and the Northeast, even the parts of the Mid-Atlantic area, will be dropping below zero. Some areas even 15 below zero, 20 below zero. Temperatures dropping below zero over parts of New York, areas further north than that, and some areas even further south than that, parts of Pennsylvania as well. That's Arctic cold front number one. They're going to be actually a little bit colder than we are over here. The Minnesota area, you can't outdo that with temperatures of 20 to 30 below zero. I've noticed this year in general, when you look at the coldest temperature in the U.S. on a daily basis, it's really unusual, but a lot of days it's in the New England area. It's never occurred in previous years. It's usually in the International Falls or some area out in the Rockies. But this year it's been in the New England area many, many days. Really every day I look at it, it's in the New England area. And we're seeing once again the major Arctic cold will be affecting the New England area. There actually is another area of Arctic cold which will be moving in Motzei Shabbos it's going to major high pressure, strong Arctic high pressure will be moving into Vermont. It's going to be centering itself over Vermont, about 30.5 initially, strengthening to 30.8. Then it will gradually weaken. We have a low pressure system that's going to be moving across the Great Lakes area after this powerful storm moves off the New England area of 29.1. Low pressure system, a weaker one of 29.7, bringing possible precipitation, and then a clipper system moves through Tuesday in the Midwest, Wednesday for the East Coast. Now we're going to talk a little bit more about the storm. There's a lot to say, and I hope I get to it all. There's a lot to say about Atlanta, Georgia. The current indications are that Atlanta, Georgia will be getting a significant winter weather event. There is likely going to be snow. This high pressure system, there are computer models, which it seems like this is what's going to be happening, which is bringing that Arctic high pressure further south and making it stronger. The storm track, the storm track is going to be highly dependent upon the Arctic high pressure, which is moving into Vermont on Sunday. The stronger that high pressure is, the further south the computer models are taking the high pressure. And with that, the further south the low pressure system is going, and it might even be affecting the deep south with snow, not just the south central states, but maybe even parts of the deep south. Currently, Highway 40 is no longer the boundary between the significant snow to the north and non-significant snow to the south. And when you go to like the Tennessee area, currently it's dropped to the Mississippi-Tennessee border. That area, that border, that's the line right now. And it might be moving further south than that as the storm gets closer. Storm is expected to be affecting the upper Midwest, the North Dakota area for tonight starting after midnight. It's going to be a long duration event moving into the Minnesota area, parts of Iowa by tomorrow. Winter storm warnings are in effect for a large part of Iowa starting tomorrow morning, remaining in effect through Shabbos morning at least, maybe even longer. It's the long duration event that's going to be allowing such high snowfall accumulations for Iowa, with most National Weather Service says 4 to 10 inches with some higher isolated spots. Others say it's not just the long duration event, but there actually will be high snowfall rates at some point, and there actually will be some areas that might walk away with 15 or 16 inches of snow. That's something that we'll have to wait and see if that really happens. There's no print on that. No one's actually officially forecasting that, but that's likely to happen. And then on the East Coast, snowfall rates also are expected to hit 1 to 3 inches per hour. That's due to the intensity of the snow. It's not because of the powdery snow, fluffy snow. It's just because the snow is going to be really intense. Those east winds off the Atlantic Ocean are going to be causing the upward lift in the upper atmosphere, which is going to intensify snowfall rates, will likely intensify snowfall rates, We also have a warm air nose, which will be moving through parts of the East Coast. That's also right outside that area. Snowfall rates may intensify. There's also a dry slot. There's a lot of different variables which the National Weather Service and meteorologists have to deal with, forecasters have to deal with when forecasting this storm. The meteorologists in Minneapolis, they are the ones who have a headache right now. They're actually reporting. The meteorologists in the National Weather Service, they actually say they have headaches and they really don't know what to do with the system. Because for them, the system is happening, it's only 12 hours away. It's less than 12 hours away, and they still don't know. There's still uncertainty. There's a higher level of uncertainty with the system than usual. So they're the ones with the headaches. The other ones, the storm is still several days out, so there's plenty of time to work on it. We should point out that there's going to be an ice storm likely. There's going to be likely ice accumulations for parts of the southeast, parts in the northern Georgia area, the Carolinas and Virginia. This will be a significant ice event. Power lines are likely to go out. Power lines are going to fail. This will also be likely to be an extended power outage event for several days. There's a good chance that's going to be happening. So people would want to prepare. They should prepare beforehand for this. These ice storms are really significant, and when they affect they do affect the southeast parts of the United States. It's more common there actually than the northern states. It's really common in Baltimore, actually, the ice storms in general. But this time around, I think it's going to be starting off as snow for many of the big cities. The East Coast event is going to be from Sunday, especially late Sunday into Monday. Precipitation starting off as snow with 1 to 3 inches over many of the big cities before it transitions over to rain. But areas just to the west or the northwest suburbs of the Boston area may be seeing 3 to 6 inches of snow, and then you get to 6 to 12, and then finally 12 to 18. And if the bullseye is over certain areas, which are closer to the Great Lake area, then you will see higher amounts than that. We have a couple other blasts of Arctic air coming in here in the Midwest and the East Coast for next week. One is going to be following the storm system. Then we have another one coming in after Tuesday into Wednesday's Clipper system. That one's going to be bringing several inches of snow for the western New York area, also bringing snowfall accumulations for parts of the Midwest and other areas of the East Coast. Another really big thing that's happening here. We have a full moon. The full moon is Monday. That's going to be a major variable in producing coastal flooding. The high tides, the water is going to be producing flooding. We have a major storm, we have heavy rains, and we have the full moon that's going to be having an effect on how much damage this storm does as it moves up the coast. We do have unseasonably warm air that's been in place over many locations. Today, yesterday, temperatures have been in the 70s for places like Little Rock, Arkansas, 50s and 60s over in Kansas. Kansas City, Missouri National Weather Service was speaking about temperatures in the 50s and even the low 60s for today. That warm air is expected to return to that area for a short period of time for next week. Temperatures might also go into the 50s and 60s. The snowfall is going to be a variable in determining how warm those temperatures are going to get next week. When you do have snow on the ground, it does delay the warmth. It absorbs much of the warmth. The temperatures don't go that high. Thank you for listening. Everyone stay safe. Enjoy your weather. Have a wonderful Shabbos and a gute Nacht.